I'm ready.
Okay.
To ready this one. With the,
All right, so this is Ryan. I'd like to get started. We have a couple of folks who are going to be presenting today. So my name is Stefan from Conservation Works, and I'll introduce the program a little bit more in detail in a minute. But first, I want to introduce Linda from the Mendocino Resource Conservation District, and she's going to talk a little bit more generally about our watershed and what's involved in it. And we'll talk about our program and a little bit more nuts and bolts from our water technologist, Brian. We'll talk about specifically rainwater catchment techniques, how to do that on the ground kind of thing. So, Linda.
So, it's really nice to see all of you. Thanks for coming out on Saturday morning. I don't feel like some of you may have seen some of these slides before, but hopefully, I've added some new ones and some new twists, and we're still looking for some projects. So I'm really happy to have this opportunity to talk to you here in Rancho Navarro in the neighborhood here, because we've got, in terms of the day, we're going to be here till noon-ish, and then we were going to have like a bag lunch or have lunch, or hopefully you live nearby and if you need to get a lunch. But then we're going to, after lunch, go tour some sites, some neighbors here, up to Jim Young's and to Bill Harper's place, and go look at some systems that have been installed and that have been running for years. And so what I'm going to be talking to you about is related and separate, but it's pertinent to you who live here in Rancho Navarro in the North Fork and Mill Creek subbasins, because we have a lot of grant dollars that are focused in this part of the watershed because you're in a coho watershed with coho salmon, you're in a priority subbasin. And we have been actively working on planning and some implementation in both North Fork Navarro and Mill Creek subbasins. And there's a lot of resources that are going to continue and are available now to get projects developed here that would particularly related to enhancing stream flows and habitat, but also increasing water security. And we also have some other relevant grants to your neighborhood. So just wanted to give you a little bit of an update on some of these projects and programs.
Let's see the slides.
So starting in 2015, basically, we've been in this new normal, this new regime of since 2012 drought years through 2018. We had, significant series of drought years. And that was terrible. 2013, 14, and 15 were all critical low flows. And up until that point, the Navarro seemed to be holding fairly well, even though coho and steelhead populations were going down steadily. By 2012 flows, we've been doing a lot of work on restoration in the whole watershed, but then by 2012, it was clear that the flows were getting so low in the late summer season that we could do all the work to restore the watershed, but if there's no water in the creeks, it's for naught. And so really we shifted attention a quick pivot to really focus on enhancing stream flows. And we partnered up with the Nature Conservancy and Trout Unlimited, who have brought a lot of the science and expertise to support our efforts here. And so we've been working together since that time, and have gotten, I think, 3 rounds of planning grants from Wildlife Conservation Board and 1 implementation grant. And so I like to describe it as sort of the wheels are on the bus. This is okay. So here we are in the Navarro watershed. I don't know if we're moving the subbasins, but some of those who have heard me speak before, I like to continually refer to it as an upside down rubber chicken. And we have basically this is one of those Navarro Creek subbasin, which is like Airport Road in Northville. So this is ironically because the top of the watershed is that it's full of everything that it has marked like this. Then we have, so the vision is this basin here, and the stream comes in here. And as from my Ukiah area, you're 253 and Northville Range. And this Anderson Valley, around through here. Then you have Indian Creek sub-basin through here, this whole watershed. And then you get down, we call this the main set, like this part. This is like Greenwood Ridge Road and Canyon. And then, this is Mill Creek. Sub-basin that actually flows into the main stem in Navarro. Here, just by Canway Summers. And where I'm from. And then, basically this is the North Fork of Navarro where you guys are considered ecology. And so, we're somewhere in here, where this is where it actually, we're in here. This is Nephi, right here. It could be wrong, this could be Nephi. One of these two. It flows into the North Fork of Navarro. This red is, this is the core coho area for recovery. This is considered a stronghold for coho salmon in the watershed. Steelhead use the whole watershed, but a lot of the dollars, the focus is towards coho because they're endangered. And so some of the numbers for steelhead and coho, they were listed in like 2025 as endangered in the watershed. And this is the California coastal coho salmon. It's a evolutionary significant unit. Sorry to get jargony on you, it's kind of silly, but they go from basically Mendocino County down to Santa Cruz is where the coho range for Central California coast coho. When you get above Mendocino County or the Eel River, it gets into, actually it's into the Eel River and north, it's Oregon, Sonk. It's so Southern Oregon, Northern California, evolutionary significant unit. And so the Central California coastal coho are endangered, and that's where there's just a lot of focus. And the Navarro, and particularly the North Fork Navarro, is considered a stronghold for the recovery. And so, basically, some most recent numbers are 546. This is returning adult salmon, and they will be coming in now once we get the flows that are. Hey, Nancy. Once we get flows that are like, good storm maybe this week, we'll see. It's starting to back up down there at the mouth. We need the mouth to open. We're a sandbar built mouth estuary. And so that mouth needs to open and have enough flow in the system to be able to have the coho come up and spawn. But this is between now and January is the coho season. And like in I think it was 14, the bar never opened really, so we had a zero count. And so there's between 0 and 546 is sort of our number. We're trying to get to 5,700 to delist the species. Steelhead, as I mentioned, had a little bit higher numbers, but they've also been kind of fluctuating and kind of, struggling as well. These are threatened, and they're basically distributed through a whole watershed. And but so both species, there's interest and support from the agencies to recover them, but coho being endangered is sort of like where really the focus of the support is. Yeah.
If you're really dry, does that mean that season's defunct, with it not gonna work, the spawning, or is it about the mouth opening?
We don't know exactly.
Yeah.
There's not totally enough. The mouth has to open for them to get in to spawn.
Yeah.
If it dries up at the dry season, so the bottleneck is, it can be the winter flows, like as if we get the zero return, but the bottleneck is really in the dry season where it's drying out from between July and October. Our streams are drying out much sooner than they would have historically and not holding pools as long. And so that's where we're really focusing on restoring dry season flow. So as I just mentioned, this is a core area, and I guess I'm going to keep stressing that because what that means is a ton of resources are coming and are here to help assist with getting projects to help both the species as well as increase water security for landowners and farms. So these are some recovery actions that are listed in the coho recovery plan, and So eliminate summer stream flow depletion, promote winter water storage, which is what we're doing today. Add large wood to improve habitat. Maybe if you walked in the demonstration forest, if you walk along the North Fork Navarro, you may see some of these large wood structures. Some of those are naturally recruited, meaning they fell on their own, but a whole bunch of them were installed intentionally to help with habitat for the fish. These are some examples that you'll see. Those were actually all added structures. Modify road crossings to allow fish passage, which we did on Appian Way here 2 winters ago. And address erosion to reduce sediment delivery and to slow spread and sink the water for groundwater recharge. And I'll talk more about that strategy as well. So one of the things that we've done is we've worked in Mill Creek to create this collaborative water management plan, and we're doing the same for the North Fork. So you guys are gonna, basically have a plan written for the North Fork that will be relevant to this subbasin, and your input and your, there was a survey sent out a year ago. We could maybe try it again and see. I think we sent out, forgetting how many, 147. I think we got 23 responses, which isn't horrible considering, but we could always use more. The approach here, you can download this at our website, RCD, it's under resources and flow enhancement. But basically, for those, there's a couple of you here that are from Mill Creek subbasin. It sort of outlines, there's a lot of analysis on the stream flows and the fisheries and opportunities, and the strategies are all laid out and for recovery. And so a lot of science goes into it, and set some goals and targets for recovery and what stream flow conditions would be needed to keep support for coho, and help us work with the agencies to streamline permitting. We are, and also to seek more funding. We are, we've been working, the whole watershed and everywhere on the North Coast, it's for the impact to fisheries in particular and the natural resources has been basically death by 1,000 cuts. And so we've been working as like a project by project basis. It's going to be dozens, if not, hundreds of small projects to get back to some semblance of recovery of natural processes. But what we're trying to do now is, rather than we have some demonstration projects, we've been getting our strategies down, we've been working to, have examples in the community. And now we want to go landscape level more. We want to accelerate the pace and scale at which we get projects done. So partly we're really excited about this rainwater catchment project program, because that's a perfect example of where we could get a lot of tanks across the landscape, potentially combined with some infiltration basins or rain gardens to actually catch some overflow and have pollinator habitat or wildlife habitat. And then also do some maybe water use efficiencies. So we're working towards that. That's a little bit separate program, what you're going to hear from Una and Stefan and Daisy and Brian. But so there's a lot of levels. That's, I guess, my point. So there's going to be a lot of resources coming here. And so in the coming months, we're going to continue to write this plan. And just, we've been trying to ring the bell for a couple of years, and it hasn't been an overwhelming response. I don't know if we haven't been, what do I want to say, effective at communicating that there's resources available to landowners for planning projects to enhance stream flows in the North Fork community. And so if those of you that are here today, and Mill Creek, so that's, take the message home to your friends. And we are recording this, and we hope to share this out with friends and neighbors and more widely than this group today. But basically, we'll do the same thing for the North Fork as we did in Mill Creek. We'll have that report written by May probably, or June, and it'll have specific information and targets related to the North Fork. So here's your North Fork. Basically, some of these, if you can see residential homes, this is Raincatchers. That's a kind of a important part of the whole. It's a very sparsely inhabited watershed. This is primarily almost 90% owned by Mendocino Revenue Company. And so they're also a very strong partner that we're working actively with. And so then we've got some people up here on Flynn, and G, and the town of Navarro. So they're on Soda Creek, and there's Navarro and Soda as well. So the folks that live in Navarro are eligible for this. And this is all like South Ranch and kind of home back, so very backside of Holmes Ranch. It's pretty wild. So they'll all end up being connected at some point. And then these are some of our strategies: storage and forbearance. Show that photo again without changing the meadow. Floodplain reconnection is just allow the water to spread out where it can and access its floodplains to slow down and recharge groundwater. Fish passage, that's a photo there from Appian Way Crossing. That was, I'll show some photos from that. Forest health and fire preparedness is another really important strategy, I know, for all of us. Fires probably our most critical number one thing that we're all concerned about. Then maybe water, I mean, well, they go together, but fire is seemingly more immediate, I think, on people's minds in some ways. Most of their wells went dry, which that's been happening with the drought too. So there's a lot of science that's trying to look into how forest health and fuel load reduction can help us enhance stream flows as well. And that there's theories out there saying that where we used to have, maybe I'm just throwing out some numbers, do not, quote me on this, but like where there might have been 40 trees per acre, we might maybe have 4,000. So it's just basically, exponentially, all the small trees are growing with their evapotranspiration, could be using more water. So they're also a fuel load. And so reducing those and using them, and there are also some opportunities. Hi, good morning. To use some of that material in groundwater infiltration. And then here's some more, another strategy we're working on is large wood. Installing large wood, and that creates deeper pools. So, Nevis Gulch, this is further down below, but you can see some of these wood structures that have gone in. Basically, from Appian Way down to Masonite Road has been treated with large wood, as well as the North Fork Navarro has large wood installed along the demonstration forest, but also into MRC, almost to Flynn Creek. Not quite to Flynn. And so, yeah, this was a double culvert, shotgun culvert that came out. This was running downstream. I think. Yeah, looking down, you're looking upstream, sorry. This is the same thing. So this had basically lever size was a fish passage barrier. So now you can see a fish can go through here. We had to go right up to the base of the culverts. And so now, we haven't had enough good winter yet flow. I'm hoping to have good conditions. We'll get fish up to the next barrier, which is at basically to the pond, right? Which is a whole other topic we've been talking about. Removing that pond dam and letting fish come up all the way as far as they can. It's maybe about a mile of, they call it an anadromy. That's the level of spawning reach that the fish can come up and build their beds. So also in your neighborhood over on Flynn Creek, we've been piloting a project. This is pretty exciting for us. Piloting a project, this infiltration project. It's a control study. So we have a treatment watershed and we have a control watershed. And we have baseline monitoring through some groundwater wells, and in-stream flow monitoring. So the treatment watershed has been getting what we call belly stuffing. And I think this is a technique we're hoping to bring to you in your neighborhood soon, where it's like basically we're using some of that fuel load and the green branches we call laws, like green laws, and also some of the small hole diameter or it's not your typical throw your crab and which is what I call it, which is old style. It's very intentional and it's almost like treating a wound and using some of that, we call it green gauze to, basically clear out that gully and you use there's like a whole technique and how you lay your branches in and you just keep adding in branches and laying in this green gauze to fill up these gullies. And the idea is they're gonna slow the water, they're gonna capture some of the sediment that comes down and those fine sediments and fill in. And basically the tree roots, it'll hold water in that soil longer. So when we have these gullies, this gully goes maybe 2 or 3 or 4 feet in, depending on where you are. So when the summer flow gets to the bottom of that, all of this ground that is above the base of the ravine it's just drying out. There's no access anymore to sort of moisture and winter moisture and the whole water. The soil sponge is probably the greatest storage we have for water in the landscape. And so we worked with the Seas crew, California Conservation Corps, and the RCD staff, and we worked together and spent 3 weeks stuffing this gully. We're just getting some preliminary data back. We had done about only 10% of the gully last year for some training. And so, even though it was drought years beforehand in the baseline years, between the control watershed and treatment watershed work, we are, looks like seeing some effectiveness of the holding water in the groundwater longer. And, so super excited to see what happens after this next winter now that it's got like 10 times that treatment. And then down in the floodplain area, we did these, kind of call them like they're like fascines. They're just using that small diameter wood and using some of the small material, the fine fir needles and redwood needles and kind of creating mustaches. Along here, so the water as it spreads out in the lower floodplain area. This is not, that it would just spread out and slow down and sink in slowly and hold water longer. etc. I'm trying to think of where my perspective is, but this is right along, so then it goes right into Flint Creek. Any questions anytime, please. So, we've been doing outreach. And this is an example, Mill Creek and National Road and Holmes Ranch Road, we have these signs that we made by Brian Wood and Boonville, and Tori Douglas from Lemon Fresh helped us, and they're super cool, and I'm pleased, because I know people nobody loves signage, but these signs have held up really beautifully, and the community's taking care of them, and it's been years now, and we changed them, through the signals and what kind of walk where you are in the current flow. And that might be something that if there's interest, we could do here as well in, Rancho Navarro. Would be a good sport. So we have been assessing basically, some of these were through, we've been doing community outreach, we're working on this analysis right now, so there's a lot of science and data that's happening in the background through Nature Conservancy and Trout Unlimited. We do have a few gauges that are in the stream, we have one in Nephis, there's one on Flynn, there's one on North Fork, or 2 on North Fork. So we're trying to get a better understanding of what's happening with the flow. Other than that, before these gauges went in, the one gauge we had was down about the 5-mile marker on the main stem of the Navarro River. As a historic gauge that have had since 1950. You can get those reports in your email and follow and track what's happening with the flows of the Navarro. But as we get these tributaries gauged, it's just helping to really identify for us sort of priority areas and opportunities, and also project effectiveness as we get into implementation. We do have a big project at Camp Navarro that is going to be going in the next year. That's going to be a mega rainwater catchment tank, 125,000 gallon tank from their launch. So pretty excited about that. But so we sent out the surveys, and I think we might want to try maybe one more round, see if we get some back. And then we're continuing our outreach. There's still time. We'd like to, what I'm at presently thinking about these 3 projects are more broader landscape level. So what I'd like to, we've been working on developing a proposal for a tank program. And it would be similar to what these guys are proposing today, or not just proposing, but have in the end through their grant funds. But it would be probably more highly developed with array, and more hands-on implementation for assistance. So what these guys have is a tank giveaway. I think in the future grants that we're looking at potentially more like a tank, possibly with a rain garden, because we think that the overflow from the rain tanks is really where the flow enhancement strategy is. The tanks are fantastic, but they only hold so much. It's the overflow and slowing down that water that we think is also of value. So, and then maybe doing some water efficiency assessments. So we hope to maybe do up to 20 of those in the North Fork in the coming years, that like 2 years. And then also, sorry, simultaneously with that would be looking at infiltration potential for gullies. And I can see there's a really beautiful demonstration. We can have some fun just cracking a gully out here on the backside of the firehouse. It's a really small gully, but it's to be a great demonstration project. And we also have been doing some mapping is when the pond comes out, which is gonna happen in the next year or so. It would be nice to above the pond area, so in this part of the watershed, increase infiltration opportunities and slowing, spreading, sinking strategies for the water to help charge and recharge and keep this wet longer. So I'm looking at sort of those two landscape level approaches and then combining permitting on some of that too. So this is another grant. So this is what we do with the RCD and the nonprofits, and we partner with nonprofits and other people. There's a lot of funding that has been coming towards climate resiliency. We have this other grant that's just landed that we've talked to you about a little bit, but we're going to be, we just are getting to contract on this. We're going to be installing 6 rainwater catchment tanks on the backside of the firehouse. Possibly up to 8 if there's room and the flow is there. And then we're gonna install 1 residential 5-gallon tank system that would be like a fully, like again, the pad and conveyance. Maybe not a rain garden, but a fully designed system. So that would be, again, something that we'll be talking to folks about as an opportunity. And we could get hopefully started on that coming in spring. I just really wanted to show you a couple examples of some rainwater catchment systems that we've done. And this is at Hunch Vineyards, and we did a demonstration project there off of their kind of guest house. And it's just this part of the house. It's a small tank, because that's what they have size for. And then it has some interpretive panel, as you can see here. And then there's another interpretive panel that talks about sort of the program with enhancing stream flows. So it's a nice kind of public interface where people can learn about rainwater catchment and the rain garden. Yeah, it's just been doing great. And Blue Meadow Farm, these are 2 different types of tanks in the sense that this is a rainwater catchment tank that captures water off of their shop. And this is the largest tank that we've installed rainwater catchment. This is about 39,000 gallons. And we built a bigger vegetable farm. And when we first started working with them, there's a lot of advantages to rainwater catchment. It's you basically you don't need water rights permits. It's you need a building permit, but you don't certain sizes, and that's kind of the beauty of the 5,000 gallon tank systems is that you don't even need a building permit. So that's partly how we want to be able to accelerate pace and scale. But also, it captures water off the roof and the shop. So this was to provide one. And they realized after this project went in through similar funds, it's the same program, but different. This was Prop 84, this is the Prop 1, we're into a new proposition where the funding is coming from. Basically, in that time that we started speaking to them about their water needs, they needed more water to get through and understand their own Mill Creek, and they were drafting from Mill Creek. We were able to, basically they came to understand that Mill Creek was a priority for Coho salmon, and that given, this is an off-stream storage tank, so they now fill in the wintertime, draft water in the wintertime to fill this tank from Mill Creek. And then they've forbear pumping during the July through October season. So this is how we get people sort of off stream during that low flow season time. And that's enough water security for them to sign this forbearance agreement for 20 years, and we help them get a new water right, and it can be pretty complex and take some time, and but it's a good strategy in the right situation. And then this is just another small project we did at the Anderson Valley Elementary School. I have to share this, is that, so we have some signage system through job response outreach program for schools. But I just love this. This is Chris Bain working with students, and they did this as a little red schoolhouse. They matched it in Van Gogh's Starry Night, and they have, you know, like these, like, oh, we bet some people like baby Santa and some here and stuff. It was super cute, really fun.
What does that take?
That is that was a 1,500 gallon tank. Yeah. Morning, Bill.
Morning.
And that's the end of my presentation. So. Any questions? Get lined up for the next.
I have a question.
Yes.
I was advised that the runoff after you capture your rain, and you can redirect that back into your well, recharge your well, because there's a basin under there, right?
Yeah.
And is that something that you all have any experience with, or is it?
Not in any specific way, but it would, that I'm aware of, but I know that those strategies, that might be something that we could take a closer look at. I mean, there's certain like comments, and one of the things is, how do we get to, even if we slow and spread and sink the water in the winter, how do we know that it'll still be there in the late flow season, you know, in the low flow season? And, you know, groundwater is super tricky, like, it's hard to get, and I don't think our understanding, we just can't see through the ground that easily to understand all what's happening and with the different geologies and soil types, so it's kind of a place specific to what your soils are as well. So,
I just want to say that.
Yeah.
I don't think you want to put surface water back in your clean well. Most wells are rather clean, rather uncontaminated.
yeah,
That would be pretty.
so, but if it's going into the ground, am I misunderstanding? So the ground would filter it, it's not actually going directly into the well?
Put it in.
Area, right, it's as like a, as a
Same as right now.
infiltration strategy, right, just to recharge around the well, yeah.
What's nice again?
Yeah,
You'll see that in winter.
good, good. Yes, sorry.
So sorry, I missed the first part, but I can go through therapy and have you experience with more group movements type administration and development?
Some, and that's where we are interested to pursue those, so, again, it's site specific, because we're on steep slopes, it's a pretty, we want to be very careful about earthworks, because we would want to make sure that the geology and soils can hold up. Because if you're adding a lot of weight and how it's, you know.
Yeah.
So,
It's too much long.
yeah, yes, yeah, but yeah, you don't want to cause erosion, so how it gets designed is super, important. And, but we'd be interested to look at those kind of options, and then we're going there.
Yeah.
And we have a specific, place that we could take a look at, the idea is.
Well, I'm on the region. And so I would kind of like, supposed to be like a kind of flat area, follow the trigger piece, so it's really flat in mind. With work on very pieces.
Yeah, and even the infiltration basins that get vegetated a little bit, where they can just hold water under there, is that about what you're talking about? Yeah, those are the kind of strategies we can. Yeah. Cool. It's all.
Let's get up and prevent erosion too.
Topsoil.
Thanks, Stefan. Cheers.
All right. Definitely do that house too. I'll probably cover a little bit of a lot of things that Linda talked about, so I won't spend too much time on those kinds of overlap things. But I guess move this. So that's our agenda for the day. And our program that we're offering is Raincatchers in your neighborhood. So associated with that is going to be I'll talk about our organization a little bit first. So Conservation Works, we work from Marin County up through Mendocino County and also Lake County. So we're a nonprofit. We're focusing this program as Raincatchers, but we also do a lot of pollinator patches and we work with farmers. So we do a broad range of conservation work kind of activities. And we've been doing it for over 20 years, working with communities, individuals, and organizations. So we kind of range between government agencies and individual land. And even though these are really complex problems, the solutions can be pretty simple if we all kind of take a little piece of it and do a little bit more work and work within our own framework. That all adds up to be a pretty big impact overall. So just as sort of an overview of conservation hydrology, this is a really nice illustration of kind of the different aspects of all of this hydrological cycle and what impacts we can have on it and how we can work with it. And I noticed one thing in Linda's presentation talking about sort of that impact of like the gully stuff, and that was great. I hadn't heard about that, and I like how it sounds like there's a little bit more like weaving and technique in that, not just throwing junk in the ditch. And you know, a lot of this Raincatchers program, the focus is to be able to have more stream flow in the summer months, right, for Komo salmon. And that's great. But that also has a real impact on the forest system because the fish are this living system that brings nutrients from the ocean, right, where they're staying alive, they're building up all of the nutrients in their bodies and bringing that back upstream and working against, you know, gravity essentially. And when they spawn and die, they bring those resources back to the forest and bring its health. So not just the water flow being good for the forest, but actually the fish bodies is a critical part of that. And that slow it, spread it, sink it, we're gonna hear that over and over again. So getting that maybe later on. So why we should build these rainwater catchment systems, I think Linda touched on those things a little bit, but you know, we have a changing climate and changing weather to go along with it. So it's going to help buffer both our impacts and our resilience, our ability to adapt to that. It's going to reduce the amount of erosion we have and stormwater pollution, right? All that stuff being carried out. If it has a chance to go infiltrate and filter, like Bill was saying, you know, with our wells, oftentimes wells are going down into an aquifer layer that is below sort of a geological seal in some cases. So it's really clean water that's been filtered over thousands of years through a very extensive biological and mechanical system in the soil. So if we can get the water to slow down and filter it through that, then we can let nature do its work of remediating the pollutants that's in the water. And of course, recharging the groundwater and then saving our salmon and bringing those salmon back. So how is that really going to be helping our salmon? Well, we have a lot of salmon. I think Linda spoke to that really well and shared with us where the details of the salmon endangered and some of the data that we have regarding that. So I'm not going to go over that too much. This is focusing right now on the Navarro River watershed, but we also will be working with several other watersheds.
I'm not saying we put in the ocean,
So a different technique, just reclaiming. So yeah, schools are a great place to work with these kinds of projects because, you know, then we normalize it with kids. They grow up understanding that, you know, where water is coming from and what we can do to impact the conservation of the areas in the broader ecology, how that affects things. It's a great learning opportunity, and they get to have an experience in directly working with that. So I think now is going to be the time that I'm going to introduce Brian Heacock. He's our water technologist, and he's going to talk about the specifics, the mechanics of the rainwater catchment system and how you can do that and some of the critical components. Just use the arrow. Yeah, great, thanks. Great information, love to hear it all. So if there's anything you can add to any of this, it sounds like you have a lot of experience with these, please jump in. There's done a few of these and still learning new techniques and stuff, so, from what I know, trying to elaborate a little bit on this. So, yeah, I mean, this is the basic system, and conveyance is what we take off the roof and into the tank, and then conveyance also out of the tank. And then, using water, some people have you can just feed through gravity this, or you can have actual pump systems. If you need to irrigate the gardens and pump it up, or pressurize a drip system, or sprinklers or whatever. So that's the conveyance. Let's see, so, yeah, 5 things: catchment areas, the roof, obviously, ideally, the, metal roofs are great. So it's nice clean water, but a lot of the roofs, I'm assuming around here, probably like a tile, composite roofing, which is has a little gravel on it, and so that tends to, have a lot of impurities that come onto it, and so, it's good, it's fine, and then the clay style roof that we have here, those aren't as good as well, because they absorb a lot of the water. It's just not clean, but, the metal roofs are ideal, nice and clean. And so then we have conveyance pre-treatment, which is the first flush system. So a lot of the water that comes off, it goes into a big storage tank, which is kind of cleans the roof as the first rains come, and takes some of those impurities out. But with the cleaner area, I mean, I kind of think those can be used in a, let me see if I can just go to one of these. This is the first flush. So the water comes off of the roof here, and typically goes into this, it cleans the water off the roof, cleans the roof water that comes, and it's for like impurities that you might get in an urban setting. Out here, if it's clean water, you're talking about like dust, maybe some bird droppings, a couple of leaves and stuff. So if you're using the water for irrigation or for whatever, I mean, you could almost, it's money. So it's a cost, takes a little bit of installation to do, yeah.
Yeah, and so then, but first you have your leaf catcher, right?
Your leaf catchers,
So that's like,
Yeah.
that's all right in the gutter down
Right.
south. And that catches some of the leaf material, right?
the heavies, yeah. Yeah, the heavier debris. And then, so when you get like in suburban areas where you might have like dirty air from whatever kind of pollution, you'll have the first rain will flush off, especially right at the first rain, where there's a lot of impurities on the roof, will fill this giant tube. And, before any water goes into the tank. So it's a cleaner tank, especially with impurities, if you're using it to water your vegetable garden or, directly on veggies. This is nice, and this is nice to have. I mean, it does flush the system of any kind of debris, and so it is nice, but it is a cost, and it takes a little bit to install. There's some, material costs and time in installing. So this could be, you could do a system without it, especially in a non-urban setting, yeah.
So is there a filter in there? You have to change that right away?
So this operates, it fills up, and as it fills, this little ball floats to the top and then seals. So once this fills, the ball, it acts like a shut-off valve, and it comes into this and fills this. Over time, there's a drip at the bottom with a filter. And so over time, the ball will settle through the dripping water, and it'll first flush again and again, which you don't really need to, yeah.
That's cool. They're like, we can't have a valve or something. There's different ways, but that's.
Plastic fall inside, yeah.
I don't, in my experience, I would have a full size opening and open.
Yeah.
All the credits and.
Yeah, so typically,
Fill out the credit.
exactly, so there are some that have a filter in here, they can actually filter it, but. A lot of them have like a drip emitter, So the water just kind of drips out over time, but you're right, this gets all full of crud. So typically on the bottom of these, when we design them, I'll just screw, bushings in there, and so and not sealed and tightened. So they can just unscrew by hand, and it can actually dump out, and it's like seven rotten leaves and whatever else.
It's basically discard.
Yeah, and just let it flow on the ground, mud, kind of, yeah. So, yeah, I also just put valve and left the valve cracked a little bit, so it drips, and so it's easy to just open the valve and let it drain out. There. Yeah, so that's the conveyance, that's the first flush that can be taken or not.
If you want to know why you're, oh, sorry.
Yeah,
You're going here
dry conveyance means, with. So dry conveyance, roof collection, leaf meter. First flush converter, you can see all this gets filled with water, it's larger pipe. So you can get volume. Hopefully the whole roof. And then you have your overflow, which is here, and actually it goes out against it. But, dry, meaning it comes off your roof, first flush, and then it goes into your tank. And then when the water stops, this dries out. So when the rain stops, this is a dry system, and we seal everything. Versus the other wet conveyance. So, yeah, let's just stick it. So wet system, coming in, here's the gutter, first flush, here's the, there's the first flush system, and then the water comes down underground and back up in here. So this, from basically the inlet, which is right here, the level, the water levels to there, all stays wet all year long. So it actually needs to be glued up like a pressurized system. So it can't be just like loose fittings and stuff, it's always full of water.
I think it's a name that is describing, it's, I love this science fact somehow, for me, that, concerns like that, so where your leaf feeder is, right, is really the inlet, right? And so that inlet into the tank, if it's below the inlet,
Right about there.
yeah, if it's below, water will find its own level. So that's how it goes down and comes back and makes it into the tank.
That's right.
And it has a name, some scientific name.
Yeah.
Siphon.
What is it?
Pressure then. So even though
Yeah.
It's really cool.
It's head pressure there, pressure head, yeah. So, this is all head pressure in here, and whenever you have a little bit of water, it equalizes. And if your tank is higher, you're not getting any infiltration, well, your tank won't fill, so. The top of your tank inlet right there just needs to be below this level or equal. So you can put your tank as far out as you want, and, it doesn't have to be, it can be in a lower area out by your garden, as long as it's, the equilibrium is there. Same with your overflow, as long as it's level at least, or a little less, you're gonna get overflow. So this is all wet, full of water, basically, from the leaf feeder to there, it's full of water all year long.
And, okay, so if there's, the advantage to this is you can place your tank anywhere, right, or to a certain distance, or anywhere, you just put in that level area, but, and then you need screens though, because if all of it
Yes.
in there, then the downside is that potentially,
Mosquitoes
right?
Yeah.
Screens.
and other varmints will get in there.
Also,
So you have your first filter screen, so the first leaf feeder screens are actually, for mosquito, the gauge the mosquito can get through, which I forget.
well, for the leaf feeder system, I should get a keeping system for your site.
Comes with the string,
Sorry, I'm going here. I have, and I have the part of all these laws from these, nobody supports you, these. But, little mice can get up into the overflow pipe for the room, you'll mess, so you have to screen off a certain background in there. There's kind of moments, right? Yeah, and so I'm looking through what you would. Your site is in a perfect for anything. Look at the leaf eater, which is just like a big screen, plastic screen that you can take off, wash off, scrape the leaves off. And then inside of that leaf eater is a mosquito and the critter nylon screen. So it's kind of a system that helps you.
Right in there on the back side. So you have the leaf feeder screen there, you have that screen there, and then it's important, and then outlets. With every screen as well. So inside the tank, you'll have an install screens there, because you will get varmints, mosquitoes, everything else will come up into here. And so. Yeah, it's gotta be screened, it's gotta be a screened off system, and especially when this is full of water, because, yeah, everything's gonna get attracted to it, even if the tank is empty.
Right, can you keep that up there? You know, you want these systems to be set up where they're not with the flow of your data, you know, so here at this site, this is a maker studio, studio maker space. People have a natural pathway along the that side of the building. And then now it's gonna be kind of carrying the flow of big distance. So that maybe wet systems that people could install. So you always have, you know, that you can do a wet system that helps make this work for you.
Tank placement could be, there's much more forgetting if your tank is. And then this is a giant parking around the inside. This is just like a little planting thing that we stuck this tank in, mostly for demonstration, but Stefan did the whole, culture, and so the outlet actually takes all this water, instead of going into the storm drains it actually sinks it into this little planting strip. So, I'm thinking most of this water staying in this like 20 by 40 little area and the ground recharge. And then this path is tracked as well. And then this is easy to access as well. You have a tank right here, so you can get to this leaf feeder and remove it. And then this is, if you can see the bottom of the first flush is a big bushing that can just be turned off, can be opened up, also be just turned off, and all this waste can be just deposited on the ground. And then this is a valve for this garden with stuff on planted. You could use the water, I think we're using it, but all access to the water as opposed to it right here.
And there's two actually, right? There's the one at about knee level and there's one at the very bottom.
Probably a clean out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a clean out at the bottom when we're raising. Or to get all the water. Yeah, just a nice diagram of what everybody does and what could be done. Actually, it's taking storm drains, instead of going in the curve and down, I can actually put them into a planting strip, which a lot of these planting strips along the sidewalks are above the sidewalk in the storm drain. To actually put them below, capture that water instead of into the storm drains, something that is a great thing. Yeah, consider where the water can't be stored, there's a plan for it, so, just like that planting strip you did in the middle of a huge parking lot.
It was our parking spot.
And then it was just a massive concrete slab, and there's this tiny little, that we were able to take all the, and then there's massive roof too, so the tank is more of a demonstration. I don't know what size that tank was, 2,500 gallon maybe, it's a smaller tank. On the one before, but there's a ton of water now that's getting. I mean, the hula culture that you dug down was what, 4 feet, 3 feet down?
Yeah, we went more here than that.
There's a lot of, I would like to have seen that overflow if there was any for that.
The only, the site of that tank was kind of not on the highest point. So unfortunately, it doesn't make it through the whole area.
Okay.
You know, I think it would be at the highest point and then go down through the whole thing.
Yeah.
So what's that word you're using, something culture?
Hula culture. Yeah, like Stefan could speak more on it, I don't really know the technique, it's like a permaculture technique of soil health.
Yeah, that is everybody know. All right, I'm coming back.
So you can see this is another demonstration kind of thing, but they're gonna use all this water for these little gardens that they have. It's surrounded by sidewalks and hardscape. So it's a great way to create little gardens in urban settings. And then where the tank drops, these bioswales are great to drop on. And that's what you're talking about, is like getting the water, instead of having it just flow out, actually sink it a little bit into your garden, in your yard, for one, if you want to create better gardens. But bioswales and rain gardens and all, obviously, we don't want to have like standing water, we want to try to sink it. Because the standing water can create mosquitoes and stagnant ponds and whatnot. If it's done right, can sink all that water. Yeah, and like, so where houses are built, I mean, the first thing you have is a bunch of site work. And they carve a pad and they compact, build a giant house on, put a roof on. So you have all this compacted area and it's just asking for runoff. And so it's an area that catch that water you would have in the natural environment sink. If we can catch it and do our thing with it through storage and through bioswales, it's ideal. So then every house is a compacted area of you're not catching any of this water. And then kind of dwelling and stuff. You guys are mostly out in this beautiful area where there's would have been a lot more, a lot more seepage in catching the water. It's a great way to catch the water off your roof, which is a hardscape. Is this you, Stefan? So any questions about building these systems at all, or do they? I mean, obviously we're here to help with coming out and seeing the site and then helping design and taking care of some of the technical parts of installing, whether it's a first flush, dry catchment or wet, and tank placement. Tank placement's really important. I know you guys are on a lot of hillsides here, and so it does need a level pad. The tank needs to be in a level spot, and I think the tanks are about 5,000 gallon tanks are about 12 feet in diameter. So they're not massive, but it does need to be level. And it's nice to have a gravel bed at least. So concrete obviously is a bigger carbon footprint to put down a concrete pad, but that's ideal because it lasts forever. But the gravel pad is very doable versus just soil. The soil will tend to, we'll get gophers underneath it and stuff. So a layer of gravel, the tanks are strong enough that they can sit right on top of like a drain rock gravel, not like a road-based gravel that will need to be compacted. So just a drain rock gravel that's already compacted. You can set the tank right on top of it. If there is any kind of slope on one side or the other, they have these gravel rings, tank rings. I'm gonna go back and show you. That is just on ground. And it's a very flat area. As you can see. I don't think, no, we didn't put it on that. It was a very hardscape area. And so we just put a thin, leveled it and put a thin layer of gravel. Yeah. And it didn't need any compacting, but that's the ring there. So this is a level area. It didn't necessarily need a ring, but we put it on. This metal ring gets bolted to itself, so it won't spread out. And just a few little stakes. It's pretty simple. This was pea gravel, which it doesn't need compacting, but drain rock is also something like crushed drain rock is something that most people use. And just like 4 to 6 inches, 4 inches of that. So it's not a huge impact to bring in some gravel. It's recommended. And then obviously concrete is great, but that takes a while. It's a pretty big build out to do concrete, so it's not costly. Yeah,
A lot of harmony too.
Alright. Any other questions? I'll be available when I come up to do the tank giveaway. I'll be able to come out and help with design and tank placement.
So during the winter, the downspout is actually super active. And
Oh, yeah.
so that is a great spot to just, like, as you site your tank, you have room below it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you can take, like, if you're installing a tank in your downspout, I mean, you can take that water anywhere you want. So you can take it out to a rain garden or the best place.
Energy that's gonna be coming out of that downspout, you just can simply put, cobble over your wall. It's, slow it, spread it.
Yeah.
See the ground, it's just that, just the whole concept of like slowing down the energy around your scouring. Systems.
The next 5,000 gallons of water that you can use in the dry season is great. Yeah.
It's like an adult sound.
Yeah. And then the maintenance on them is pretty simple. I forgot to mention that, but the leaf feeder has a little screen that just slides out. You kind of tap it, rinse it, and go back in, and chicken screens on the interior. It's pretty much maintenance free on the inside, the screen on the downspout, but that's pretty much it. They don't have maintenance, or there's not a lot of maintenance on it.
Clean out your gutters.
Yeah, clean out your gutters for these. I mean, the one thing about the leaf feeder that we like is gutters always clog right where the first L is typically. So with the leaf feeder, you get rid of that L. So it's actually the downspout of your gutter. And the leaf feeder, there's an area that's clean, so you actually have less clogging in a gutter system with a leaf feeder. But if you have big leaves that sit on top of the leaf feeder, it'll just shed the water right off. So you do have to manage that.
What about the gutters themselves? Do you recommend anything other than a regular household living gutter?
Any gutter works. Yeah, if you don't have a gutter, you obviously have to install them. Yeah, and then there's a formula for how much roof and rain you can get, how many gallons you get. And surprisingly, the amount of water that comes off a small roof. That's another thing. I mean, these don't need to go next to your house. They can go off a shed or garage or a barn or something like that. They're gonna small roof and can fill your tank. Really. All right.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll talk a little bit about the program, and then I think I'll touch a little bit on that formula, just to get a perspective of what you can do with that water and how much water you're collecting. But this program is to do a community section where we're going to be actually doing builds with community as workshop kind of thing, and then also tank giveaway. So 10 tanks that will be just given away, delivered with the leaf feeder, and then the landowner is responsible for installing it and all that. The community builds, it'll be much more interactive and have an actual workshop. Maybe before I forget about Google culture, was your question, sir?
Yeah, that's that word.
Google culture is H, German H, yeah, Google Hill.
Okay.
And culture. So, Google culture. And so that was, out of Austria, Sepp Holzer is the guy, in the maybe 70s, 60s, 70s, but, maybe archaeologically, we think it might centuries before that in, sort of Eastern European countries, mountainous regions. And it's kind of influenced by Rudolf Steiner, biodynamic agriculture. So a lot of the, I'm kind of come from the ag world, that sort of world. Basically, it's sort of like belly stuffing, but then covering it. So you dig a pit and then or ideally a swale, so a ditch on contour in hilly areas, so great for your area. And then you fill it with all sorts of carbonaceous material, larger the better. So stumps, big things, and all sorts of organic debris, sort of like a compost pile, but you're not, the focus is not on aerobic decomposition. The focus is on large carbonaceous material that are spongy. And that will be durable, not break down for a long period of time. And then you pile that stuff in, and then the soil that you excavated from that ditch, then you place over and kind of cap that mound or hill culture with that soil, and then you plant it. And so you have an intersection on the hillside, if it's on contour, you intercept the water coming down because you have a hill. And then you have a sponge essentially built in a ditch, right? So what I've found is especially like the first rains, if you don't do it on contour, which I was actually digging basically like not retaining walls as such, but for a garden section. And it was just too steep to try to re-engineer the whole hillside into contour. So we just kept it at a slight, and that just turned into like an underground, like, channel, but where all it intercepted water, was rock. That we built for garden beds, and it just distributed that water, just shot it out, the first year. But then, sediment packs and stuff. So contour is really important, level, right, is really important. So if you do it on level, then it pulls that water back, allows it to infiltrate, soak into all the carbonaceous material, and then you have roots and things growing into that, and it also becomes a nutrient reservoir. So, the first couple years, especially when we did the hugelculture, we didn't have a whole lot of debris, actual large logs and things like that. So we got someone to drop 10 yards of arbor mulch. And of course, because of all the surface area on that, and it's great carbon material and stuff, but it's a huge nitrogen sink. So the first couple of years was difficult getting plants to have enough nutrients because all of the nitrogen is taken up by the decomposition action because of all the surface area. From the arbor mulch. It's what we had, so it's there. Just we didn't get a lot of great growth that first couple of years. Okay. Yeah.
I think we mitigated that out of the nitrogen layer, the rest of the things were, like for
Yeah, I mean, we had 10 yards, so the 30-to-1 ratio of that, it would have taken a lot of nitrogen. Also, nitrogen fixing plants too. Some, red buds are native and tree ferns are great. As lupins, you find a lot of lupins around there too. So there's a lot of crossover things, but the nitrogen fixing and new virus support. So yeah, great point. Okay, so yeah.
I just want to be really clear here for the rainwater system. That is getting, and then you get Ryan to come to the other site. To give all sorts of things,
Right.
because you can't just say, here's some reflection, here's like a rain path, and it's not.
About 2,400 seats.
Nice.
So how you guys doing? We're just getting into the details of our program. How you can apply for the program and what.
Yeah, I'm just gonna, just to be real clear, so we're, giving away tanks. The tank will be delivered for free. The leaf meter and the tank for free, and then Ryan comes out to your site, if you're chosen as the look, we're gonna go look at your site to make sure it's gonna have the biggest impact if we work with you on saving salmon, right? We're all in this together. And once we choose you, we'll give you a tank. Ryan will come and he'll look at your site, he'll give you advice. He's gonna give you his phone number, you guys can FaceTime, you can do all sorts, he's gonna really guide you. And you building it yourself, or getting somebody to build it for you, even maybe doing some schematic, designs for you. So Linda's project, where she's gonna be more full on, full scale in the future, sounds really awesome. And I really should do that too, we're getting good, and we're planning to do all that we can do. We need it all. And we also are going to be doing 15 community building sites within our other watersheds that close to as well in Sonoma County. Especially the watershed, but those days will be open for everybody to come and learn and do it. So we'll have teams, we'll have workshops where you can learn how to make the first flush I do there. You can, look at the ball, maybe we'll have a bag of bubbles that we should give out for you for the students. But you'll learn how to do it by actually doing it with us, or you can just kind of channel. So that's our system for people to stay home.
And then, yeah, so at that site visit, we'll make sure that there are ideal site conditions both for the capturing of the rainwater, but also that it is going to be beneficial for the global salmon. It's one of those things where even though it's an individual landowner that benefits, that has an impact throughout the whole watershed. Effectively, right? So the whole community really benefits from the individual working with that system. And then we'll just have to have it installed by this time next year, October of next year. So for that adequate space, it's about 12 feet in diameter when you consider the pad and access around it and things. The nice thing about that wet system that we were talking about, dry system versus wet system, is and dry system to some degree. When you have your downspout from your rain gutters, it's kind of set and that's going to wherever it's going. This kind of gives you an opportunity, as you've had experience with your property, oftentimes the downspouts were there before you got to your property. You can take what you know about your property and rethink how you want that outflow to go, because like in those high rain events, it's just an extension of your downspout in a slightly different place in a dry conveyance, and might be very different as far as the location in the wet conveyance system. So we have that opportunity now to redesign where that water's going to go, and what it's going to do, how it's going to be productive and beneficial. This can be pretty heavy, so up to 50,000 pounds for 5,000 gallons of water. That's heavy stuff, so you got to be careful that it's not going to mess up your house foundation or cause any other problems. And I've seen water tanks that up to refuse over time, so you want to make sure that it's as compacted and get it in that spot. Gutters and downspouts are necessary for that because that's your collection method, and then figuring out what you're going to do with that overflow, and hopefully you can do something productive with it and not cause additional damage in the road by slowing that water. Spreading it. And the really critical thing is that we want to offset summer stream flow, right? So instead of you continuing to draw water that would be going into the creek during the summer months, you are replacing the water that would be drawing from the stream. We're replacing that with 5,000 gallons that we harvested in the winter time when the stream didn't need all of that flow. And actually, one of the things that I just discovered and putting this presentation together and working on this is that when we have these high stream flow events, it can scour the stream, the creek beds, and disrupt the eggs and the structure that is needed for the eggs. It can eliminate that. So when we have those high flow events. And in that bigger picture kind of sense, when we have a healthier forest, we have more infiltration and slowing, so we don't have these runoff events. And so there's a myriad of things from the texture, how much debris is on there and where it's laid, that stilly stuffing that you're talking about, how that's done to the actual carbon content of the hupoculture we're talking about, actually absorbing and storing in the carbonaceous material, wood and different leaves and things like that. In a super healthy soil, we talk about soil organic content, and that's about 10% on a really good soil, like the Midwest soils or the Amazon soils. There's a lot of carbon. A lot is 10%. In California, we have degraded our soils around, in general, to 1 to 2%. So a significant reduction in soil organic matter, and that soil organic matter is what does a lot of the water storage. In addition to just the porosity, that spongy texture, actual air faces in the soil holds a lot of water as well. But between those two things, if we eliminate the carbon and we've compacted the soil and we've reduced the amount of texture on top, we get a lot of water just shooting out and rushing the streams and carbon problems all the way out.
So you mentioned direct diversions, which I don't think we have here necessarily in Nicus Gulch, but if there are wells that are maybe under flow connected, would be one idea and one thought. So anyway, there's still some prioritization strategy that we're probably going to think through, I think, because in some ways in a small it's not something like Nicus Gulch here, they're rich together by having
in terms of what qualifies for this.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still some things to sort out, but the closer you are to a stream or a ephemeral, or you're feeling well is connected, Yeah,
Yeah.
would likely bump you in terms of priority.
I think, yeah, you started off the talk by saying it's hard to see through the ground, right? So we don't have a real clear way of assessing, how likely this is going to be. So we looked at the different cost criteria. But the first being that you're not on municipal water, right? So that you're actually drawing from something proximal to that stream is going to be likely that the principal is an experience. And then after the install, we'll just need to have some documentation from you for our reporting purposes. So just photos of your site connected, the tank connected at your site. So what's exactly provided in the tank giveaway is the 5,000 gallon HDP tank, release screen, tank delivered, and then access to technical references. So that includes that site visit, and FaceTiming with Ryan, and also materials that we'll have on our website, and we can connect you to other resources as needed be. But what's not going to be connected, provided is, gutters, the conveyance system, all of the parts, for that, and then the labor to do that. So I think we've talked about maintenance, not a whole lot, just making sure that the screen is clear, the gutters are clean, so that you're actually able to move the water through the gutters into the conveyance system and ultimately the tank. And then to utilize that stored water, to use it. And it's a little bit of a timing sort of a thing, and depends on how clued in you are. And I'll talk about it in a little bit as far as the quantities, the amount of water that you're able to collect in that. But if you can empty that tank throughout the wet season a couple of times to use that water in your landscape and get it to recharge, rather than, in October, if you fill it up, just storing it until May or June and then using it. If you can discharge it a couple of times when you can reasonably anticipate you're going to fill it up again, that's going to be more beneficial. But that's, just depending on how the year goes and our forecasting abilities and things. But then making sure that you do have a full tank before the dry season begins, so that you can prevent drawing from the creek during those dry months. That's most important. So our timeline on this is the application. We'd really like to get people to have applied by January next year, so 2 months from now, so that we can do a site visit and put together our selecting criteria. And then what's going to be required is a signed letter of intent. And we're going to make that as easy and simple as possible with as little legalese. But basically it's just going to be that you're committing to intending to use this water instead of drawing water from the creek. Then fill some months. And then installation by October of next year. And then the documentation. So not a terribly complex process. It's, we realize it's only 5,000 gallons. It's not a whole lot. But when we collectively all do this, we can start to make a much bigger impact than we can individually. So in terms of using that rainwater and how much rainwater that is, another one of the benefits of the rainwater is it's going to be some of the cleanest water in terms of not so many minerals and pH neutral and oxygenated as well. So it's going to be really good quality rainwater for new plants. It's not intended for potable use, not for personal consumption, but for gardens and year.
I want to add, it's much better for the drivers as well, because of the calcium character called clean off. I'm thinking time to blow my toilets.
That's a weekly stat. So yeah. In terms of off of 1,000 square foot rooftop, that's sort of where we're changing the unit of measure, 1,000 square foot, 1 inch of rain will get you 600 gallons. That's sort of our, kind of rule of thumb. And in a potential dry year of average, 40 or sub 40 inches of rain in this area, that's going to get you a little over 15,000 gallons. So a little bit over 3 tank fills of these 5,000 gallon tanks. So
Just interrupt again, I have a hand, I'm gonna keep one back, this is probably not saying a lot, but it has a calculation on for how you can calculate. And then it has the fact that every single. Okay. For long. Instead of a calculator,
Oh,
just saying, you know, you don't get
the reality of what you're.
reality of what's flashing south, whatever.
Right, your first flood, you know, whatever.
I don't know, it's so great.
What's absorbed by the concrete tiles or whatever. Okay, yeah, so, you know, theoretical, but it's different than.
My internet is much more closer to actually. I have both. Okay.
And then, just, you know, considering we use a lot of water in our standard agricultural practices, household practices and things. And California average is about 50 gallons per person per day, as household use. But when you talk about landscape, that, you know, outpaces that by a lot. So 1,000 square foot of your, you know, green sprinkler lawn, is going to use close to 35,000 gallons of water a year to do that, to keep it nice and green. And then even with drip irrigation, you know, and veggies and stuff, that's, just, you know, 2/3 of that. Almost 25,000. And of course, depending on your soil and, you know, your growing practice and things, you can reduce that if you know, are really, consider about your water usage and things and kind of stack your functions and things. So you can use a lot less than that, but that's, we do have, you know, if you're not having to pull it by bucket, you have a tendency to use a lot more water than you would if you had to carry a bucket by bucket, right? So if you'd like to apply for a tank, there's a QR code, I think on our standard sheet, and if anybody didn't sign in, if you could please sign in, you put it in the just to make sure that you were, gives us permission to use your image in the photo.
Can we get this information for our website so that we know the rest of the community?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so what is your website?
Rancho Navarro.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, well, let me connect with you and then we can
Yes.
do great for that. That'd be great. Yeah. So we're trying to get as much outreach as we can. You know, we want to thank you. So, and we have, business cards and things too out there. And then I think there's a QR code if you wanted to snap it off of the flyer, you can do that as well. So,
And we also have paper copies, or on the
yeah, so if you don't want to type in everything on your smartphone or whatever, you can write it in the book like that. Daisy will. Daisy, John. Thanks for reminding us of that. Okay, so any questions? Okay, yeah, we've got about 20 minutes to lunch.